have you been over there? Got to get you over there, around a little bit. But it's something you all should be proud of because, and Mike worked on it with me. It is the farthest north LEED platinum building in the world, and LEED is a national program for energy efficiency. What's green building, which means sustainable building approaches, and so it is the first and the farthest north LEED platinum building in the world. There's some debate whether the Park Service got one further south of us, but they didn't have to play by all the rules. We did. That all said, it is a tangible something you can touch and feel that shows what's possible. We designed it. We were the contractor, and actually I was even the superintendent on the job. So it was built locally. I've been a union contractor forever. I believe in good wages for our people. Not that unions are the only way to go, but it was prevailing wage. And we built it at or below cost of similar, or not apple for apple buildings, but commercial buildings that were being built at that time to these high energy standards. Meaning, right now we have 25,000 square feet. And last year we burned about 1,000 gallons of fuel oil. That was supplemented by ground source heat pump and a wood-fired masonry heater. So we're targeting for that building, for at least space heating, net zero, meaning everything comes from renewable source. So we're experimenting with that. Point is, what we do has got to be real. We were founded by home builders that were tired of following the lead of Canadians and others in the world, and particularly folks in the lower 48, not building to our northern standards. So that's our focus. It's truly applied research. And the other thing, and there's several things, but we are not Fairbanks centric, though everybody thinks we are. And of course, Fairbanks and Interior Alaska has a big piece of me and all the folks that work over there. But we are a statewide organization. We built the building in Fairbanks because it's the perfect place on its coldest.
You picked such good ground.
And that's a good one too.
Oh, yeah.
That's a pretty good story. Yeah. Well, it does matter. I wanted to be near campus because we wanted to utilize those resources of the university, which is a great university we all support. We are not, capital N, capital O, capital T, the University of Alaska. We are a private nonprofit. However, they had a piece of ground below their campus that had been talked about for years for a research park and that kind of thing. Lousy ground, warming permafrost, poorly drained, lots of issues with that land, which appeared to me to be the perfect spot to build a demonstration of what's possible. So I spent more money on lawyers and wasted time negotiating a contract with the university than I would buying a good piece of NFS gravel site out on Van Horn. But it was worth it. And we got through it, and they were taking what they thought of as a big risk. Seemed like no risk to me, that we weren't asking them to do anything but let us build on some crummy land and add value to their property. But a risk in a sense, if anything goes wrong, would they be responsible? So, but long story short, we pulled it off, and our relationship at the university is great and deepening all the time. We work with Art all the time. We have a joint position now that is split between ACEP and the rural campus and ourselves. So we have a PhD, wonderful guy from Dillingham, the Czech Republic via Dillingham, who works for us, and he quarter of his time is ASAP, quarter of his time is the rural campus, and half of his time is CCHRC.
He's got a class coming up soon, doesn't
He does have a class coming up soon. Can't remember the date. But have most of you attended classes over there? So, good. No. They're free, mostly. So we do a lot of education to what we do, but we've got to do things in order to teach them. We have to show what's possible in order to make progress. So we've got a number of programs. Well, not a number. We have 3 major programs. We have building science research, and that is purely dealing with the mechanics of building science and what works. We do a lot with wall envelopes and have done a lot with wall envelopes, the way the building is built, and its durability and cost. And we have developed a number of different wall types and wall sections, some specific to certain areas of the state, some that have a universal application. One of them on the building science research wall part is the remote wall, which is you see in new construction and in retrofits that wall all over the state now. And basically it is insulating the structure on the exterior so that the wood members of the building, the structural sheeting and the studs, are in the warm part of the house. So the insulation is on the outside, the warm conditioned space inside is what is presented to the studs. So in new construction, the relative humidity and the temperature of your furniture is the same as the relative humidity and temperature of your wall. So the wall should last as long as your furniture does. So there's no condensing. There's not that huge stress that occurs in a wood frame wall between an interior environment that's warm and moist and an exterior environment that's super cold and dry. So you don't get those issues. Works really well. Now we've applied that to everything from frame structures to logs. Now in a log building, exterior insulation, same way. If the exterior insulation on a log home is an adequate R value, adequate insulated value, and you stop airflow, the log building is very high performance, and you have the added benefits of the logs absorbing heat. So that's one of the focuses, the wall envelope piece, and also on retrofits. We've done a lot. We have a mobile test lab that we designed initially to test wall strategies in Southeast Alaska. We moved it back up here when we finished that study, and we have it at the research center. Looking at retrofits related to energy efficiency. Back when we had the rebate program, there's a lot of energy efficiency improvements going on to houses. We wanted to make sure they were done right. So we did different wall sections showing the behavior of the wall, particular technique in our environment here, in our cold winter temperatures. And we stressed the inside, meaning we ran the moisture levels up, heat levels to try to bring the walls to failure and see what works and doesn't work. Learned a great deal about both. Unfortunately, in retrofits, in many cases, what doesn't work is what you see being done. Meaning, tighten it up. That's great, so that you don't get a lot of airflow. That causes problems, of course, with increased moisture inside the house if you don't ventilate. The other thing we see is folks putting on just a little bit of insulation on the outside, rigid insulation. In their older homes, they have an incomplete vapor barrier. Everybody understands vapor barriers. That's been in the North long enough. And so moisture gets in that wall. It hits a cold surface because the insulation on the exterior isn't adequate to warm up that exterior sheeting, and it condenses in the wall. And then what happens is you get water, you get mold, and you get deterioration. We have seen through the weatherization program in rural Alaska, catastrophic results from tightening up an envelope and putting a little bit of insulation on the outside and not allowing that building to dry and not having adequate ventilation. So in our building science side, it spreads over into the behavioral side and how it affects people. We have the highest incidence of upper respiratory distress in infants and adults in rural Alaska in the nation, by far, because of mold and inadequate ventilation. So one of the things we do in our building science research program is mechanical systems, heat and ventilation. Now that is something where we can get very creative and very innovative, and it all depends. It depends on where you are. It depends on how good the thermal envelope, meaning the parka around the house is, on how we ventilate and how we heat. We developed a system that we call BREATHE, B-R, capital H, capital E, capital A, capital T, small h, small e, meaning you can't have good air, or you can't have heat unless you have good air. So this is a integrated system that delivers both heat and fresh air to the occupants of the building effectively. And that can be sized for the efficiency of the building. In the building science research side, we spread over into our sustainable northern community side, which is our design and application side. So we've done a number of prototype homes and production homes, working with housing authorities and builders throughout the state, monitoring them and trying to improve how they behave. So we take something like that BREATHE system out of the building science research side, something like the wall systems that we have developed, of which there are a number, and we apply them in a demonstration home in a community on the community's invitation. We work with the community and the Sustainable Northern Community's effort to design a house for them, for their life, that's high performance, that's durable, that's healthy, that incorporates the best building science that we know, which is what is the result of our building science research side, and we combine it with the approach that good builders and designers have always demonstrated to regular folks, but not to the indigenous First Alaskans. Meaning, what do you need? What can you afford? How do you live? Where is it going? Listening to them to address their needs. Nobody ever asked them anything before. We imposed on them really a disaster. We brought them into communities where we stuck a school or a church or something, and we put them in homes that were completely inadequate, that poisoned them, couldn't afford to live in, created a burden. There was no sense of ownership in many cases. You know, it was a disaster. So we wanted to turn that around. And of course, the strongest people that the world has maybe ever seen, the first Alaskans that were successful here, working with them and finding solutions together is very, very inspiring. And so that's the effort we do with that program combined with the building science program. On the other hand, in the urban areas, showing what can be done on the retrofit side affordably, and what the paybacks are, on what the new construction, the ways to do it, and making the argument that energy efficiency, the paybacks on energy efficiency on a new home are real. These are things that the builder can realize, but even more importantly, the financer, the homeowner can realize are very important. If we can build a house in rural Alaska where the cost of a mortgage through USDA or others is paid by the savings in the fuel you're not burning, that means that a family that could afford that fuel can now afford a high-performance, healthy home where the cost of the fuel savings is paying for the mortgage. So these are the kind of creative things we want to do, which brings us into our other major program, which is policy. And if we can't drive the way we do things through policy, through incentives related to the financial institutions, through education of appraisers, which is probably the toughest nut we've got, through codes and energy standards that say this is the way it must be built, so that you're leveling the playing field on builders. So when you're building out in North Pole for folks coming in to Eielson, that you're building to a standard that's not going to become a burden on the community in the future and the homeowners, like what happened during the pipeline, the legacy of homes that we're still dealing with. How can we drive public policy so things are done wisely, so we don't repeat mistakes? And so we work a lot with the state government. We work here in Fairbanks. We work with the municipal folks related to how we build and educating them on what can be done. And we work with, on the state side, we work with groups like the Climate Change Action Committee that's just working now on public policy to emphasize the importance of not just looking for ways for bringing gas to Fairbanks or lowering the cost of the source of energy, but dealing with it on the demand side so that we actually use less of whatever it is. We ran a figure a number of years ago on the cost of the Susitna Dam, build the Susitna Dam, and the what if that same amount of money or a percentage of that amount of money was put into weatherization and emphasizing healthy homes. And for a fraction of the cost of that dam, every home in Alaska could be weatherized, ventilated properly, and heated properly, and save as much energy as the dam put out. So these are things we need to think about, and that's our job. So, I mean, as I say, my passion is building homes, and I've built for some wonderful people in this town. I just dearly love the tool built on and all of that. But my obsession is this research center and what we can do, and what Alaska can really do for the rest of the circumpolar community. And rather than us following and borrowing from others, we're looked to now as an international expert on these kinds of things. We've been Siberia and Mongolia and Greenland and Norway and Sweden. We've been all over the world and very much in Canada, helping them or showing them what we do. And that's our outreach side. And outreach sort of spreads through all three of those programs: the Sustainable Northern Communities program, Building Science program, and the Public Policy program. So outreach works through all that. And we've had over 1 million hits on our YouTube. We've done a number of different YouTubes. And those of you that haven't been to our website and or friended us on Facebook, do it. We'll get regular updates. Now, on that note, it's a struggle to keep the doors open, because it's very interesting for a guy who's, last time I got a paycheck from anything out of something I hadn't created was when I was a seasonal ranger for the National Park Service and didn't like Park Service. Not that they're good folks, but 45 years ago. So I'm used to having to generate an income. Very interesting for somebody who was a builder to now be in with a nonprofit and actually realize there's some things literally you can't generate the money for. It has to come from public side. So it's really critical that we continue to get support from the state of Alaska. And it's a bit of a struggle. As you guys know, we took a hit a couple of years ago before the current administration 50% hit in our basic, keep the doors open, go after more money support. And now we've been able to bring that up a little bit to $1 million a year, which is where it's been for a number of years. We went from 33 employees to 17, and we're kind of at a maintain level now. But the phone never stops ringing over there. We never stop doing site visits. What Cooperative Extension and Rich Seifert used to do, now we do. We go out and we look at a house with problems. I'll tell you this, last winter with the high snowfall and the issues that were going on, a little bit warmer weather and all those kinds of things, the number of problems related to roofs and ventilation and leaking problems are, and we had three visits last week, 3 site visits. Who pays for that? Well, it's really what we do with the money that the state of Alaska gives us, including our base operating expenses. So hopefully we'll get through another legislative session. We are in the capital budget. So we're not in, we don't want to be in the operating budget because then we're a state agency.
Right.
So we're directly in the capital budget, and Alaska Housing Finance Corporation is the state entity that the money comes through. So as it filters through a bureaucracy, wonderful bureaucracy, HFC, does a lot, but there's a sense of ownership that goes with that bureaucracy for us now. So it's not, that our sense of independence, we're always having to assert our sense of independence. This is a pass-through grant. This money isn't yours. This is the state's money that was allocated to us. But we're right back in the same round this year. And the thing I hate the most is lobbying, having to sell yourself. And that's what you have to do. It was nice in the private sector with, it's just reputation. You know, you don't have to go out and people know you and your work speaks for itself. That was my hope with the research center, but it's a constant educational sort of effort. Anchorage and South Central, of course, is the toughest nut. And that's our deal here too. They've got all the votes. They've got the cheapest resources. They've got the least urgency on what we do on energy efficiency, because energy is cheap. Why bother? How do you make the argument with cheap energy that as a builder, you need to build a more energy efficient home? When what people want are granite countertops and fancy accoutrements, and the house itself doesn't matter so much. So it's interesting. So we have to do a lot of education down there on what we're doing, and we're doing more all the time. So that's a little bit of a nutshell of it all.
It's a good job, Jack.
Yeah.
Very good. You've done this before. This? You know, I don't know. I don't remember.
Jack, one thing you could add to your list of people that called in. When I was working there, I got a call from Antarctica.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Have similar issues, building science problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jack, does your, I don't know if you've called it a system or just a philosophy brief, is that a unit that somebody can buy, or is that just a concept of putting something together?
It has components. But yes, we can, and actually on our website there's diagrams of it, materials list. It's not being manufactured at this point as a single unit, but the components are, and really there's only 3 components. You've got a hot water boiler, a high efficiency boiler, of which there are many. We have recommendations, but there's many good ones. Again, depends on the house and what the BTU demand is. Then that is integrated with a heat recovery ventilator. Now, again, this is for a high efficiency home. And the heat recovery ventilator and its piping becomes the distribution system, just like a forced air furnace, for a small unit heater that is in that airstream of fresh air. So
Mm.
as the fresh air is being delivered to keep us healthy, heat is introduced to distribute heat in the house. Now, in a new, larger home, hydronic heat and radiant heat is still the best way to go. In a home in rural Alaska, and the homes in rural Alaska are running 1,200 square feet with a design heat load at 60 below zero of 15,000 BTUs.
Mm.
15,000 BTUs can be heated with a long-haul truck rig heater.
Mm.
That's the size of unit it needs.
Mm.
So you've got a very efficient home, and we've tried to use a long-haul truck rig heater, and it worked great.
Mm.
But the long-haul truck rig folks did not want to be in the home heating business. And the other thing is, on these high-efficiency homes, the biggest, thank you, Anna, look at this.
Mm.
On these high-efficiency homes, the biggest energy use is domestic hot water.
Mm.
So you've got to produce domestic hot
Right.
water, so the idea is the same unit that's producing domestic hot water is producing heat for the airstream to keep the house warm. Now, on the North Slope, the housing authority up there is using this system in their high-efficiency homes that we help design. And they are putting in, on the North Slope, hydronic heating units from the sun. Because the biggest demand is domestic hot water. On the North Slope, with these very efficient homes, you could start picking up your heating demand in March from the sun, where you're not using any fossil fuels. Now, we've gotten our homes on just using fossil fuels for domestic hot water and heat, 1,200 square foot home, down to about 120 gallons of fuel a year from 1,000
Wow.
for a
pretty
similar
good.
sized home in that environment. Now, on the North Slope, of course, they have subsidized heating fuel. That. So again, how do you make the argument? You make the argument that what's the real cost? In the Kuskokwim, they get no special deals. You know, they get no special deals. A little bit of light heat money, but nothing like the North Slope. So it's got their attention. Now, in the case of working with the people in different regions and trying to get creative, we have a great film that you guys need to see sometime. It actually won the Indigenous Film Festival Award for North America. But it's working with the local people to have them build their own homes, have their own construction company. The owner of the home, it's a lottery on who gets the home. But one of the requirements of the lottery is one individual in that household, and this was brought on by the village, working on the village crew, has to put half of their wages into the down payment for the house, and they have to work on the house. So the homeowner then knows everything about that house, from the foundation through the mechanical systems, has a sense of pride and ownership, and has sweat equity in it for their down payment. And those homes are taken care of. So these are all the things we want to show as possibilities. But this is a pretty cool and simple system.
What you call relief air, that's coming out of the existing home, is that right? That's working there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing is that we have to have the booster fan, because if it's calling for a lot of heat, the HRV isn't going to bring enough air movement to keep it warm. So what that relief air does is it bypasses and brings air back and forth, just like a forced air furnace. And then it picks up heat from the heat exchanger and distributes it through the house. And we're working with the Canadians on zoning this. At this point now, on these high efficiency, smaller homes, and the way they're designed with an fairly open floor plan, you don't need zones. It's really, the temperature in the house is all the same everywhere. And we're talking about our 60 walls, that's very, very warm. Yeah.
And I think I missed it because I was pulling this up. What do you What's kind of square footage when you say like a smaller efficiency home?
1,200 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Though we have done, with these systems, we just finished duplexes in Tanana that are 4-bedroom duplexes using this system. Just a little larger boiler. So they work well. In fact, we have in Venati, you've been up to Venati and see the teacher housing up there? We worked with the people of Venati on teacher housing, and it's a 4-plex. And it incorporates logs, local logs in the area, a high R value urethane that's part of the system that we use for that house. We have 1 boiler and 3 and 4 breathe systems. 1 boiler producing the heat, 4 breathe systems. So each unit has its own heat recovery ventilator because you can bring it from a single boiler. So that's 4,500 square feet, and that used 220 gallons a year in heat for 4,500 square feet. So that's heat and fresh air and domestic water. So it's remarkable what can be done. In fact, in Venati, they brought the fuel barge up because there's only a certain time of year they can bring it up the river there, the Chenoir, to supply heat for the school and for the teacher housing. And they didn't know what to do with the fuel. They went to the fuel tank, and the fuel tank was still 3/4 full. So they had to find storage capacity for the fuel that they hadn't used.
That's amazing what you're doing there, and there's been a definite need for.
Well, we all know what it's like to be cold.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt Roger. Clark Milne, I think you fuzzily recognize because we haven't been together much.
Right.
Air quality is my question. I'm the Fairbanks representative for the Air Quality Stakeholders Group or whatever, so I'm one of them. My remembrance is that QCHRC has a rep too. I don't remember who it is.
I think Bruno's on that group.
Yeah. But my question is going to be, do you have any particular comments on air quality, which is an immense problem for Fairbanks, and North Pole wrestling with EPA, and we're trying to deal with that. Any thoughts come to mind? I mean, are we going to get through this, or are we going to have to take punishment from the feds and turn off our highway funds, or spend $120 million on upgrading, the power plants? I just wondered if you have any cheerful thoughts. If you have negative thoughts, please don't mention them.
No. I think, actually, we are very fortunate because the regional director of EPA now, Chris Laddick, you know Chris?
No, but
he's a dear friend of mine, and he's the real deal. He's an Alaskan through and through, and how he got assigned to that position.
he's Region 10.
He's Region 10.
Oh.
He knows the effort that this community is making.
Yeah.
And the key is how much effort are we making? And of course, I mean, how much more effort can we do? I mean, it's really a tough deal when you live in a cold place and the sources of energy aren't clean. I mean, and what are you going to do about that? Just the cars alone are an issue. So it's a tough deal, but if we're making progress, I don't think that we're going to get the stick, personally. And I know the community is making progress. And of course, energy efficiency and what's going up the chimney is a big piece. But it's a tough deal. Like, we have our masonry heater over there is 10 times cleaner than a phase 2 EPA would approve wood stove. 10 times cleaner. However, when there is a burn ban going on, we don't burn it. The other thing is when it starts up, it's not clean. It's got to get hot, right? Just like anything, it's got to get up to that capacity to be clean. So it's a tough nut, but I think they know that I know at least at the Region 10 level, and I just went with a hike with Chris a couple of weeks ago.
Well, Mike has a comment, but the 2 primary meetings we've had, we have another one, the 3rd one coming this week. the EPA's been there and has been leaning into it. They are there for real. I do appreciate, because I've dealt with EPA in my career doing cleanups or whatever, they were always an incredible pain in the ass.
Yeah.
It's very heartening at these meetings that they want to be part of the solution. They can't not follow laws, but they can make sure that they read things such that they don't have to create problems, invent problems with the regulations. So I know that sounds.
They're not going to make us freeze in the dark here.
Mm-hmm.
I hope not, because with the ballot measure coming up too, you know, gee, we get to do whatever we want with our, you know, burning. Fairbanks as an entity is not being very realistic. We're just going to ignore things.
We can't ignore it.
I know you're doing a lot of renewable energy research there. Do you see that as helping to clean up the air? If so, you know, how much renewable energy can we expect in the near future, if any?
Well, Golden Valley, of course, is being a real advocate for renewable
It seems to be
energy.
working.
I mean, renewable energy does work for us.
And heat, as well as heat pumps.
As well as heat pumps, but heat pumps require electricity.
So my sense is we have to quit burning anything and go to renewables in order to clean up the air.
First, we have
that means
to,
electric cars as well.
First, we have to use less, and that's the easiest one.
Agreed.
The easiest one is what you don't burn. That's immediate.
Just an example. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if let's say we've got a log house out in North Pole, and it's burning wood to stay warm, and you're burning 4 cords of wood a year, 8 cords of wood a year. If you weatherize it, do an extensive weatherization on that house, you'll burn 1 cord of wood a year. So that's an 8-time reduction in the amount of particulate. And that, the technology is there.
It's permanent too.
It's permanent. And those are investments, and these are one of the things that the state of Alaska has to understand, and I believe that there are people that do there. Those are investments for the future of communities that need to be made. The power cost equalization and all the things that to help rural Alaska, all the money that goes into changing out generators and putting in wind farms and all those kinds of things to reduce the cost of production of heat and electricity are generally much more expensive than energy efficiency and retrofits that lower the demand. And that was one of the things on the papers that came out on the Climate Change Action Committee that the governor's got, is what we tried to drill into that document is energy efficiency first and the production side second. We want to bring in gas. Now, there's lots with lower energy that isn't just space heating in homes. It stimulates economies and it creates jobs, all of those kinds of things. We need a lower cost source of energy in Fairbanks. But at the same time, we should build and retrofit what we have, build new and retrofit what we have to use much less, because we can do it by exponential amounts. And so our job, my big drum I beat, is show them it can be done. Don't just talk about it. Show it can be done. Run the numbers to show the advantages of taking that log house in North Pole and invest in a little bit of research to do things right, but then invest in the retrofit of that home so it uses much less energy and is also a healthier place to live. Just the cost of a medevac from a rural village for a child that has upper respiratory problems because of their inadequate housing at $25,000, $30,000 a piece, and you get 4 medevacs in a year, you paid for half a home. Where you're not going to have a sick child. So the real cost of things has to be looked at.
So what are like the biggest communities you've worked with? I know you mentioned that
Anchorage.
the North, sure. I mean, but like in terms of engagement, you mentioned the North Slope Borough. You've
Biggest community, rural community is probably Bethel. That we're
Okay.
very involved with. Utqiagvik, cheap energy. They need more housing,
right.
but they've got all that gas.
Yeah.
So they want healthier housing. They want warmer and more comfortable housing. They do understand that an energy efficient home is more comfortable, but they've got cheap energy.
Right.
But how cheap is it? And that's, of course, there's some hard discussions that have to get out there. How cheap is gas? How cheap is fossil fuels? It's not the cost of the commodity when it's delivered to you. It's the cost on the environment and everything else. I mean, what's the real cost of global warming related to the burning of fossil fuels?
Trillions.
I mean, it's astronomical. But we have to also believe that that's a piece of it. And unfortunately, there will be a day where there is a carbon tax. That the real cost of that is going to have to start to be realized. When you have whole communities year after year dealing with issues like New Orleans and Miami and New York, those costs. The other big concern, of course, we have here is we are 750,000 people at the top of the world. Who gives a shit? Really? When you got a city like Miami hit with 2 or 3 hurricanes in one year, which can happen, and FEMA is stressed to the max. We don't know what's going to happen this year. My son's still rebuilding his house in Galveston. He's an engineer in Galveston.
Yeah.
Can't get a contractor, but he's just doing it himself.
So in Bethel, are you doing new constructions?
What's that?
Are you doing new constructions in Bethel, or are you doing retrofits in Bethel?
We're doing education.
Okay.
We're doing new construction in the region, working with the people. We did a student housing demonstration project in Bethel that's now owned by you, Harriet. So again, people need to see it. Out in that region, we're using typically another wall system we developed called an integrated truss. You could pull it up, it's pretty cool. And basically it's a truss that is both the floor, the walls, and the roof in one truss. We developed this system in response to a flood disaster in Crooked Creek. And they asked us if we could help with temporary housing to get the people through the winter. And we had this idea about this truss, which we had seen used for garden sheds. We said, why can't we build a house that way? And we built with volunteer labor 9 houses in 6 weeks using this with an R60 envelope, uses a quart of wood a year to heat. And they were under $100,000 because of the volunteer labor and support.
And you're going to say they're still there. They did pretty good at temporary.
Yeah.
Still there.
Well, nothing is temporary in the bush.
Yeah.
If you build it, it'll be used. And this is a house that's designed to last 100 years. If it's taken care of course, you got to take care of things. And that's really part of people having a sense of ownership. Everybody built their own houses in the past. I loved going to Anaktuvik Pass on our first project. We were invited up there by George Paniak, a dear friend in the Housing Authority, to talk about housing and get off the plane and go to this public meeting. And I guess I can get away with this because I'm old enough, and I wasn't as old then. But I've also lived a life and seen things. And people are going in this meeting, there's several young people standing up. We've been waiting 10 years for a house. When are you going to build us a house? And I said, whoa. You got the wrong guy. I said, you've been waiting 10 years for a house? Yes, we've been waiting 10 years for a house. You go over there and tell that elder or tell your grandparents that you've been waiting for 10 years for somebody to build your house. What are they going to say to you? They're going to say, get off your ass and let's build a house. So I'm that guy. And if you want to do that and take pride in who you are, for God's sakes, for 15,000 years, who built your house? Then I'll stick around. But otherwise, I'm back on a plane. And that changed everything. And they built the house. These people are strong. Oh, that's a Galena.
That's not the integrated trust.
Yeah, it is. That's an integrated trust house. You have to look at the plans, though, in order to see.
So what do you want her to pull up there?
Oh, I just something on the Galena. That's fine.
This one?
Yeah. This is a home we did, working with HUD and with Corps of Engineers. They're fun to work with too. They're a fun bunch.
Huh. Weird. I mean, there's the little.
Well, you don't want the hawk.
Weird. I don't know why I can't download that PDF.
Well, you're sure providing a good
It's all
service
right.
for.
There it is. There's it right there.
This one?
Yeah.
Those are the Crooked Creek. That's the way it went. Crooked Creek.
Big
Just
garden.
pulled that up.
Yeah.
So in Crooked Creek, on that integrated trust, each of those, stay there, Hannah.
Yep.
There you go.
There we go.
We had one truss for 4 different houses. You just add on. So you had everything from a studio to a 4-bedroom house with that same truss. 2 days to get the house enclosed. Just stand them up.
Is that all 2x6?
2 by 4.
2 by 4.
2 by 4. Yeah, it's just an engineered truss web. Now it's become much more. We've gotten more sophisticated with the designs and all of that. But that's the principle.
Click up on the picture next.
This one here?
Yeah.
That's the floor of the home. That's the integrated part, the floor, the ceiling, the walls, right?
Yep. That upper right hand, just to the right of that, it shows it a little better. Yeah.
Did you
There you
set
go.
up
That's a 4-bedroom house.
Did you set up a truss plant or nearby or in the central city there?
Well, to get something, we were called in June to get things enclosed by September. No, we shipped them in from Kenai. But we have worked with Bethel and with ABCP and done a business plan and done a setup for a truss manufacturing plant in Bethel using wood from upriver to create a market. They have a beautiful old fish processing plant that is perfect for this and perfect for doing millwork, cabinets, the doors. All that can be done in the winter.
It's not good for fish.
And they're not processing fish anywhere.
What happened to the fish?
Only the fish.
You want to get into that subject? Yeah, well, the fish all goes to processors outside, the fish that they catch. Yeah.
Oh, be darned.
Yeah.
Jack, you
With
mentioned-
boats that are flagged out of Ballard and that area.
Yeah.
Do you want to get into this?
I already know about it.
I know you do. And it's annoying as hell.
Jack, you're using 2x4s. Are you, I know in some construction, when I had my house fire in the portion of the house, they did the 2x4 studs, next.
Double wall.
Yeah, and so you get a thicker wall and you're able to insulate better.
It's a good wall.
And,
We
and
built lots of those in
actually,
the 70s.
I think in the portion that we rebuilt over my house, we used 2x6s, so actually we have 2x12 walls.
Yeah.
And, it's helped quite a bit as far as,
That can be a very good wall, a very warm wall.
So that wall, it is probably what, 10 inches thick?
18.
18 inches thick.
Oh, it is
We-
18?
Yeah, we've got it down now that we can go on the verticals, we can get it down to 12.
Mm.
But the Tanana duplexes that we built in Tanana are this truss,
Mm.
and they're blown with dense packed cellulose. So you've got about an R70 wall all the way around.
So now get to the portion of the discussion where you're talking about that the wall is heated to the temperature inside of the.
This is a different wall.
Oh.
This is not the remote wall. You can pull up remote.
Well, you don't need a remote while you're building.
That was my dentist calling.
You better go get your teeth drilled. Good to see you, brother.
So you're talking, you were talking about retrofitting with the remote wall, is that correct?
The remote wall lends itself to retrofits very, very well. In new construction, like in the case of your house, Roger,
Yeah.
the remote wall would have been another option. Go down one.
This one?
There. Yeah.
Oh, it's not very big.
Yeah, pull that up full size. It would have accomplished the same thing as your double wall with a lot less labor and a lot less materials. There you go. That's not a very good illustration of it. There should be a cross section of the wall. Well, scroll down.
False advertising on that photo there, huh?
Yeah.
Got a long ways to go.
There
Yeah.
should be a nice illustration of it. There, right there, that one.
This one up here.
Yeah, that's,
Oh, here, no.
that's the one we want.
Bigger. Okay.
So, there's no vapor barrier, Roger. You've got an air barrier here. You can come over to the research center and see one.
Uh-huh.
So this is an air barrier. It can be,
Yeah.
what we like is drain wrap, or Tyvek. The wall can breathe toward the interior. So all your plumbing and wiring and everything is in the
Right.
warm wall cavity.
Uh-huh.
There's no detailing of the vapor barrier. Now, the
Yeah.
ceiling has a vapor barrier. The ceiling's done conventionally. That's simple. But the wall now, when you're building the home, your subtrades are immediately in a warm space, so they're working in the warm. And it uses a lot less material than the double wall. The other thing is, at every, we don't see the rim joist, but at every transition between floors and all of that, there's no detailing that has to occur because the insulative skin goes all the way by. Now, the problem is, and not to point fingers, but as I drive by every day on Chena Pump Road and see that retrofit going on those apartments on the left, they put 1.5 inches of foam on the outside. They've got an interior vapor barrier. They think they're retrofitting. Now they're making it tighter, that's for sure. But oh my God, unless they ventilate that really well and keep the moisture down in that building, they're going to get condensing in here, which is going to cause moisture and rot. Now, if you have a whole house ventilation system and you have balanced ventilation, not as big an issue. But I suspect they don't, because most of those don't. They just tighten it up. What you want in our country here is 2/3 of the insulation on the cold side of the condensing system. So if you've got R11 in the wall, you need R33 or R22 out here. If you have R19 in the wall here, you need R38.
So that's post cell foam of some kind?
Yeah.
How much is that?
This is 6 inches or 4 inches. This is 2 layers of 2.
11 to 12 hours.
Well, if we have 2 layers of 2 inches, we have 4 inches, which is an R20 or an R22. So technically, you shouldn't have more than an R11 for Alaska. Now, for our climate right here. But if if you're ventilating well and you have a balanced system, it's not a problem. I built houses in the 90s where we used exterior insulation. My house in Taiga Woodlands had a 2x6 wall, a very good interior vapor barrier, and 4 inches of foam on the outside. But it was a ventilated home. It had a heat recovery ventilator, and there weren't pressures pushing moisture into the walls. Without that ventilation system, of course, when you've got 60% relative humidity, 50% relative humidity, and 70 degrees inside the house, and you've got 40 below outside, that moisture wants to get to that cold air, saturate it. So it pushes that moisture right into the wall, that warm, moist air. In this case, it's stopped. There's no condensing surface. With your double wall, the good part of double walls, one, you've got a lot of insulation. The other is you don't have conduction except at the top and bottom blades. In the case of this, you have no conduction anywhere. Same thing with the integrated truss, because it goes all the way around and it's filled with insulation. There's very little conductive surface between. The biggest heat loss in a house is the edges of your windows. In a well-built home, it's the window frame. It's not even the glass.
That integrated truss, you said it was blown cellulite. Is that what you said?
We use a variety of things, but blown cellulose is what we're advocating right now. Now, with the blown cellulose, you need a vapor barrier. With urethane, you don't.
So it blows the whole truss, floor, ceiling, wall. It's all
Filled with insulation. But again, that's kind of a bush-centric way of building. I wouldn't advocate that necessarily for Fairbanks. For Fairbanks, on the road system, I like Western Insul foam. It's Alaska manufactured in Anchorage. It'd be nice if we had a plant here. Once we get the refinery going again, we will, right?
we will.
But it's an Alaska product. And the other thing is the housing industry is an economic engine nationwide, worldwide. And the jobs that it creates, from the production side of the manufacturing of the components to the guys putting things together, creates a tremendous amount of economic activity. And you can really see nationwide that the economy goes as the housing industry goes. I mean, our last recession was on the back of inflated housing costs and overbuilding and all of those issues that created a huge crash in the economy.
Isn't there a foam processing plant out at 11 Mile across from Murray's? Right?
He used to, years ago. He's really a creative guy, and he exported some of those to Russia, to Siberia, but I don't know what happened. I think he passed on. He was not a young fella.
Yeah, I don't know.
Years ago. But he embedded, he came by and saw us early in the days. This is our 20th year coming up next year, since we founded it.
I wonder if he got so old.
Yeah, I know. Good thing you're not getting any older. How can you remember anything?
That's a really good question.
Jack, I had to pick up a Condex yesterday, went over to Summit Logistics, and I'm just amazed at what they're doing.
Summit? Aren't they great?
Summit Logistics. Have you been working with them?
Yeah, they're great people.
They are, and it's a young couple. They're
hard-working.
And but what they're doing, I went through their operation. They're taking these basic Connex units and insulating them and putting windows in, and also they're doing some other stick building, type.
I haven't seen their Connexes,
but
I need to get out there.
It's extremely interesting. Quite impressed.
I really like those
what
guys.
They're doing. They're shipping units, the Red Dog, Donovan, and logo, but they're shipping a lot of those units up, for the remote camp.
Another guy who's really another entrepreneur that's kind of off a lot of people's radar is that Alaska Dreams, and their tents, and their temporary structures.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are all good. They're all Fairbanks folks. This is the FEDC, man.
There you go, yeah, we brought them all here.
The housing that will come in, housing projects and stuff, is there a good standard that they're going to build at?
That's a concern.
The question is, do they have a standard, is it good?
Well, it depends on who's financing it. It's really the financiers that demand, anything financed through Alaska Housing has to meet their standards, which are building energy efficiency standards they develop. But if it's privately financed or through a bank, it really depends on the municipality and that oversees it. In the case of Eielson, there isn't anyone. So it's a concern. Now, those builders, one of them is from, I think, Wasilla. This isn't Wasilla. So there's details that have to be done right, but there's no real oversight. We have advocated, meaning we, the Alaska State Home Building Association and professional home builders, have advocated for years for a state building code and a state energy code. And we've come close, but we haven't gotten there. And if we had a state building code and a state energy code, they would need to be inspected and they would need to meet those codes, whatever is built, that uses private money of any kind. That doesn't mean that if you were an individual and you wanted to build something that was your own money, you could build whatever you wanted. But if you wanted to sell it, it was going to be financed, it would have to meet those standards. So you're limited on what you can do. If you want to carry the note, fine.
I mean, does the military require a certain?
Sometimes they do.
I'm talking about housing that's being built for the private housing that's being built for the military. You're talking about the construction that's going on us.
On base or off base?
I mean, in terms of, there was a lot of housing off-site, right?
There's no military housing being built on post.
So does not the military require a certain high standard?
Not outside. No. So it's buyer beware. Yeah, there's not a lot being built. The housing needs study that have been done related to that, it was pretty inflated apparently on what they thought we might need. The market has a lot right now on the market. Apparently, you've been close to that.
Yeah, I guess that's debatable. The problem, as we saw it with the growth management plan, they used a economic analysis company by the name of
Northern Economics,
who used a national model called REMI to model the Fairbanks economy. They show the Fairbanks economy over the next 30 years as if we did not have the F-35 coming, as being flat. We couldn't find anybody else that projected that. We talked to the Department of Labor. We talked to the people at ICER, and they said, "Geez, that doesn't make sense." But apparently, that's what this REMI model said. The problem, we were not able to get any foundational information from REMI model because it's a proprietary model that costs something like $60,000 a quarter or something like that, and we just didn't have access to that kind of money. So what they did is the military came up with a needs analysis of about 900 housing units. Because Northern Economics had come up with this projection, it basically shows that Fairbanks doesn't need any houses for 30 years unless we have the F-35s coming. So, they took that and they took the 900 and they dwindled that number down to about 180 housing units that are going to be needed in excess of what we're actually building today. My opinion is we're going to be short. But collectively, the way we look at it anyway, the entire Fairbanks community, not just North Pole or the surrounding area of Eielson, but the entire community is gonna be able to absorb those 900 housing units. Now, the military may not be living where they'd like to live, closer to Allison, but they'll still be living, in a home in Fairbanks, Alaska. So, I think over the next 5-10 years, you're going to see, kind of a scramble to put the housing up. Because there's going to be a demand, in the North Pole area. But, my belief is, we talked to Secretary Wilson just last week. My belief is that the military has looked at the growth management plan. They said, okay, well, you think you got it covered, you got it covered. If they believe it's okay, we believe it's okay. We will house them, and eventually Fairbanks will take care of the market. So.
Yeah, and of course, spec building on maybes. Apparently the couple of builders that are out there are doing it, taking the risk.
But to your point specifically, one of our big concerns is, are we building the houses today in Fairbanks that we'd like Fairbanks to look like 20, 30 years from now? And quality is a big issue. So we're just in the process of putting together another housing committee, and the idea is to look at what's being built, the quality of what's being built, and what would the community like to see the housing in Fairbanks, the construction in Fairbanks be, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. So, what comes out of that, we're not quite sure, but our guess is, some of the building that's being done today is good construction. Some of it is not, and we don't like, even if we identify that issue, there's absolutely nothing we can do to change it. It's just being built. If somebody's, I would say, probably the limiting factor to be able to build, as most of the housing that's being built, surrounding North Pole is going to be off of city water and sewer. So you got DEC that would be, looking at their sewer and water supplies, and but that would be the only limiting factor I know about
At this point.
Yeah.
I still think we have a pretty good chance of getting a state built code, state code. I hope that's the case.
You're hoping sooner rather than later.
Well, the bill's ready. It's just there's been opposition primarily in Wasilla. Wasilla has no codes and no zoning and no planning.
Wasilla also has a high vacancy rate, so they might start to appreciate some of these higher quality. I mean,
Maybe.
I
It's
don't
all
know.
about cost and
Yeah.
getting them sold there. It's hard to say.
I mean, Wasella's near North Pole.
Right.
Yeah, and we, may have a governor from Wasilla. So I doubt that it'll go anywhere if the administration changes at all.
Well, Jack, thank you. It was an excellent presentation.
So sorry about.
No, that's my apology. I'm sorry.
Right.
Thank you for
Look,
coming
Anna,
anyway.
I think, I could have probably remembered. It was a short conversation. But then I would have spent an hour yesterday getting ready for this. I didn't really need to.
This was great. Great.
There you go. You got more important things.
You guys are great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Glad you were here.
And come by and see us. How are you doing, Joel, my man?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah, you lost your little hummocks.
I didn't lose it. I shaved yesterday.
Yeah.
Every, when's the fiscal quarter?